Australia is about to become the first country on Earth. A Chinese manufacturer with more money than most governments is launching its first ever Ute here before Europe, before America, before anywhere. And the question nobody in the industry can stop asking is whether that's a compliment to Australian buyers or whether we're about to become the world's most expensive beta test. I've been digging into everything publicly known about this vehicle, and by the time we get to the comparison chapter, you'll understand exactly why the HiLux and the Ranger should be genuinely uncomfortable right now. Why Australia first? Let me start with the question that genuinely stopped me. Why would the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer choose Australia, a country of 26 million people on the wrong side of the planet, as the global launch market for its first Ute, before Europe, before the United States, before Japan, Korea, or any of the massive markets where BYD already sells everything from city hatchbacks to articulated buses? The answer, once you understand it, is actually obvious. And it says something genuinely interesting about how the global car industry now sees us. Australia is the Ute capital of the world, full stop. No other country on earth buys Utes at the per capita rate Australians do. The Toyota HiLux and the Ford Ranger have traded the title of Australia's best-selling vehicle back and forth for years now, a battle that no other vehicle category even comes close to. We don't just buy Utes to use them, we buy them as status symbols, as daily drivers, as family cars, as the one vehicle that has to do everything from the school run to a weekend towing a boat to a beach 300 kilometers from the nearest dealer. That specific mix of demands, urban, rural, recreational, and commercial all at once, makes Australia the perfect proving ground for a Ute that wants to demonstrate it can do everything. BYD knows this. Their local team has been lobbying hard internally for Australia to be the launch market because they understand that cracking the HiLux customer is a different challenge to cracking the EV early adopter. The EV early adopter will buy almost anything with a plug if the software is good. The HiLux customer will not. The HiLux customer has opinions. The HiLux customer has a checklist. The HiLux customer will stand in the sun for 45 minutes, pressing on the tray floor to check the flex before they'll even ask about the price. If BYD's Ute can win here, it can win anywhere. That's the logic, and honestly, it's sound logic. There's also a more practical reason. Australia has one of the most developed charging. A quick word before we go on. Most people spend thousands of dollars repairing cars long before they actually need to. Professional mechanics have known for decades that a handful of simple habits can make almost any vehicle last far longer. And I've gathered 101 of those insider secrets into a book called The Mechanic's Bible. I won't mention it again. If you'd like a copy, the link is in the description. Infrastructure rollouts relative to market size in the Asia Pacific region. We have the towing culture that will genuinely test range under load. We have the corrugated dirt tracks that will tell the engineers what the suspension is actually made of. And we have a consumer protection framework that will hold BYD accountable in ways that some other launch markets simply wouldn't. So yes, it's a compliment, it's also a calculated bet, and the people making that bet are not amateurs. What we actually know about the Ute, right? Let's get into the actual vehicle, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Confirmed details are still arriving in waves, so I'm going to be straight with you about what is locked in and what is still in the category of credible but not yet signed off. What we know with confidence is that the BYD Ute will be a dual cab body-on-frame Ute, which is the right call and the only call for the Australian market. Anyone who thought BYD might try to sneak a unibody construction past Australian Ute buyers clearly has never met an Australian Ute buyer. Body on frame or go home. BYD knows this. The platform underpinning the Ute is understood to be purpose-built for the application, which is a significant statement. BYD has not simply taken a passenger car or SUV platform and stretched it. They've engineered a dedicated Ute architecture from the ground up, which is the same investment decision Toyota made with the HiLux decades ago, and the same one Ford made with the current Ranger generation. Powertrain options are where it gets complicated and genuinely exciting. Multiple configurations are expected. A pure electric variant is confirmed as part of the lineup, and the numbers being discussed are substantial. Payload figures in the 1-ton class, towing capacity in the 3-ton class at minimum, with some reports suggesting the top specification could push toward 3.5 tons. If those figures are verified at launch, BYD will have matched or exceeded every Japanese Ute currently on sale in Australia. The battery architecture is BYD's own blade battery technology, the same lithium iron phosphate chemistry that has become BYD's signature advantage. Lithium iron phosphate does not have the energy density of nickel manganese cobalt chemistries, which means the pack has to be physically larger for the same range. But lithium iron phosphate does not catch fire the way nickel manganese cobalt does, and for a ute that will be parked in sheds near fuel under Australian summer conditions, that thermal stability matters enormously. Range figures being circulated suggest somewhere between 400 and 500 kilometres on the official cycle. Real world range under tow, which is the number that actually matters in Australia, is something we simply won't know until the vehicle is in Australian hands on Australian roads towing Australian loads. And I will be watching that data very closely when it starts coming in. A hybrid variant is also expected, which is smart. The pure electric ute will attract enormous attention. The hybrid will sell in larger numbers, at least initially, because range anxiety on a ute is a different psychological beast to range anxiety on a city commuter car. Nobody cares if their Polestar 4 can't make it from Sydney to Melbourne on one charge. People very much care if their ute runs out of charge 2 hours from the campsite. Pricing has not been officially confirmed, but market intelligence suggests BYD will come in aggressively, not give away cheap, but meaningfully below the top specification, HiLux and Ranger variants. That pricing strategy is deliberate. BYD is not positioning this as a budget ute. They're positioning it as a value proposition against premium-priced Japanese and American competition. The BYD story. Who are these people? Really? Some of you watching this will know BYD well. Others will know them as that Chinese brand that started showing up on Australian roads a couple of years ago with the Atto 3 and the Seal. And a few of you, I suspect, have never heard of them at all and are quietly wondering how to pronounce it. It's Build Your Dreams, by the way, which is either inspirational or slightly unnerving depending on your mood. Here is the actual company behind the badge, because context matters enormously when you're thinking about whether a brand will still be supporting your vehicle in 10 years. BYD was founded in 1995 in Shenzhen as a rechargeable battery manufacturer, not a car company, a battery company. They moved into automotive in 2003, which sounds recent until you realize that's 22 years of building cars. They've been building electric vehicles since 2008. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway took a significant stake in 2008 and held it for years, which is not something Berkshire Hathaway does with companies it considers a punt. In 2023, BYD overtook Tesla as the world's largest seller of electric vehicles. In 2024, they sold more than 1.7 million pure electric vehicles and an additional 2 million plug-in hybrids. These are not niche numbers. These are numbers that make most traditional car manufacturers genuinely nervous about their own futures. The engineering capability inside BYD is extraordinary. They design and manufacture their own batteries, their own electric motors, their own semiconductors, and their own charging systems. That level of vertical integration is almost unheard of in automotive manufacturing, and it gives BYD a cost and development speed advantage that no other manufacturer can currently match. Here's the part that matters for Australian ute buyers. BYD has been operating in Australia since 2022. The Atto 3, the Seal, the Dolphin, and the Shark have all been on sale here. The dealer network is growing. The service infrastructure exists. This is not a brand arriving cold. They've made mistakes here and they've fixed some of them. The early software localization wasn't perfect. Some owners had complaints about over-the-air update processes. These are real issues and I'm not dismissing them, but they are the kinds of issues a competent company learns from, not the structural failures that kill brands. The case for buying one. I want to be genuinely fair here because this is where a lot of automotive commentary falls down. It's easy to be skeptical about a Chinese ute in a market that has worshipped Japanese reliability for 40 years. It's harder to actually look at the evidence and give credit where it's due. The case for the BYD Ute is stronger than a lot of people want to admit. Start with the battery technology. Blade battery lithium iron phosphate is genuinely excellent chemistry for a working vehicle application. It is extraordinarily thermally stable. It charges and discharges in ways that do not degrade the pack rapidly. And the cycle life, the number of times you can charge and discharge the battery before it degrades meaningfully, is substantially higher than alternative chemistries. BYD has documented over 1 million kilometers of commercial vehicle operation on this battery technology. This is not an experimental chemistry. This is a proven industrial product. The torque story is compelling and real. Electric motors deliver their full torque from 0 revolutions per minute. In practical terms, that means an electric ute towing a loaded trailer off a beach ramp, up a steep driveway, or out of a muddy paddock has access to its full pulling power from the moment it starts moving. A diesel ute has to build into its torque band. The physics here genuinely favor the electric drivetrain in hard working conditions. Running costs will be substantially lower. This is not a marketing claim, it's arithmetic. Electric drivetrains have fewer moving parts than internal combustion engines. Fewer moving parts means fewer service items, no oil changes, no filters, no timing chains, no diesel particulate filters, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know exactly how much grief diesel particulate filters have caused HiLux owners over the years. The fuel cost difference between charging an electric ute at home overnight and filling a diesel ute weekly is significant across a 5-year ownership period. BYD's pricing strategy in Australia has been consistent. They come in below where the market expects them to, they hold the price, and they let the product speak. The Shark plug-in hybrid, which is not a ute, but is their only body-on-frame vehicle currently in Australia, launched at a price that undercut comparable diesel alternatives meaningfully, and the technology package being discussed for the Ute is genuinely advanced. Driver assist systems, connectivity, over-the-air update capability. These are not differentiators in the premium passenger car segment anymore, but in the Ute segment, which has historically been slow to adopt technology, they represent a genuine leap forward. The case against buying one right. Here's where I earn my credibility, because if I only told you the good stuff, I'd be no better than a brochure with opinions. The single biggest risk of buying the BYD Ute is the same risk that faces every new entrant to the Australian ute market. We simply do not have the long-term reliability data. The HiLux's reputation was not built in a year. It was built across decades of owners flogging them down station tracks in Queensland, leaving them parked in Saltaire on the New South Wales coast and running them to 300,000 kilometres on the original engine. That data exists. We can point to it. For the BYD Ute, that data does not exist yet because the vehicle does not exist yet. You will be the person generating that data. Whether that appeals to you or horrifies you tells you everything you need to know about whether you should be an early adopter. Towing range is a genuine unknown, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Claimed range figures are generated under controlled conditions without a loaded trailer attached. In the real world, towing cuts electric range significantly. How significantly depends on the weight being towed, the speed, the gradient, and the temperature. Until Australian owners are running the BYD Ute from Brisbane to Cairns with a 5-metre caravan behind it, we won't know the real number. And that number is the one that matters. Charging infrastructure outside the capital cities and major regional centres is improving but remains patchy. A diesel ute can refuel at virtually every town in Australia with a service station. An electric ute cannot do that yet. If your ute life is primarily urban and suburban, this is a minor concern. If your ute life includes regular runs into genuinely remote areas, this is a major concern, and you need to plan around it honestly. Resale value is an unknown. BYD passenger cars in Australia have depreciated harder than the established Japanese brands in the used market. That pattern may change as the brand matures and as used buyers become more comfortable. But right now, if you buy a BYD Ute at the launch price and need to sell it in 3 years, you are taking on depreciation risk that a HiLux buyer is not taking on. And the software dependency story is worth watching. Modern BYD vehicles are deeply software integrated. That integration is a feature when everything works. It becomes a vulnerability when it doesn't. And the history of complex software in vehicles, as any Range Rover Velar owner will tell you at length, is not always a happy one. How it stacks up against the HiLux, Ranger, and D-Max. Let's do the comparison properly, because this is the chapter the comments section is going to fight about the hardest, and I want to give you something worth arguing over. I'm going to measure the BYD Ute against the 3 dominant players in the Australian ute market, the Toyota HiLux, the Ford Ranger, the Isuzu D-Max. Those 3 vehicles represent the benchmarks that matter, and any new entrant that wants to be taken seriously has to be assessed against all 3, against the Toyota HiLux. The HiLux's reputation is its primary product. 40 plus years of Australian owners proving that it can take punishment is not something you replicate by writing a press release. That reputation is real and it is earned, but the HiLux has had problems that its reputation has partially shielded it from. The diesel particulate filter class action covering hundreds of thousands of vehicles. The wiring fault recall on 13,000 current generation examples over a potential loss of power steering. The limp mode issues triggered by dust-contaminated sensors. I covered all of this in my Ute Countdown video, and the comments from HiLux owners were instructive. Many of them had lived through exactly those faults and still love the vehicle, which tells you something important about loyalty and also something important about the gap between reputation and reality. The BYD Ute on paper matches the HiLux on payload and exceeds it on torque. The electric drivetrain eliminates the diesel particulate filter saga entirely. The pricing is expected to undercut the top specification HiLux meaningfully. What the BYD cannot match is 4 decades of proof, and in the Ute market, proof is currency against the Ford Ranger. The Ranger is the engineering benchmark in this segment right now. It is a genuinely sophisticated vehicle with genuine off-road capability, a strong towing rating, and a feature set that has dragged the Ute segment forward. It is also, as I've documented previously, a vehicle that has been hit with recall after recall on the current generation. The camshaft sprocket fracture recall on the 3-litre V6 diesel alone caught close to 13,500 vehicles. The transmission software recall, the brake boost recall, the Ranger's strength is its dealer network and its parts availability. You can get a Ranger fixed almost anywhere in Australia. That's a genuine competitive advantage that BYD has not yet matched. Where BYD has a potential edge is running cost and technology. The Ranger's powertrain, for all its sophistication, is still an internal combustion engine with the associated service costs and the associated failure modes. The BYD's drivetrain eliminates most of those failure modes at the cost of introducing new ones we haven't fully mapped yet against the Isuzu D-Max. The D-Max is the tradies Ute. It's the one that gets bought in fleets. It's the one that gets loaded past what the handbook recommends and driven by people who regard the owner's manual as light fiction. And it largely survives all of this, which is why the tradie market keeps coming back to it. The D-Max weakness is that it is not exciting. It doesn't have the Ranger's feature set or the HiLux's mythological status. It just works, reliably, repeatedly, without drama, which, in a working vehicle, is not a weakness at all. It's the entire point. The BYD Ute will need to prove it can match the D-Max's durability under genuine commercial use before the fleet buyers look twice. Fleet buyers are not early adopters. Fleet buyers are the people who wait for the reliability data to exist before committing. BYD will need 2 or 3 years of commercial fleet operation data before that conversation gets serious. The honest summary: on paper specifications, the BYD Ute is competitive with all three. On proven track record, it isn't competitive with any of them because it doesn't have one yet. That gap closes with time. Whether you want to be the person who helps close it, or whether you want to wait until it's already closed, is the fundamental question every potential buyer has to answer. The dealer network and servicing reality. This chapter matters more than most people realize when they're standing in a showroom being excited about a new car. The vehicle you can afford to buy is only half the story. The vehicle you can afford to own is the other half. BYD's Australian dealer network is not small anymore. That matters. By the time the Ute launches, BYD Australia expects to have dealers operating in every state, with representation in major regional centres as well as metropolitan areas. That is a meaningfully different situation from what faced, say, the early LDV buyers who discovered that their nearest dealer was 4 hours away when something went wrong. And things always go wrong eventually. That's not pessimism, that's just physics. Parts availability for BYD vehicles in Australia has improved substantially since the early Atto 3 days. The local subsidiary has invested in parts stockholding, which means common service items and known wear components are available without the 8-week wait from China that plagued some early owners. This is documented improvement, not a marketing claim. The servicing model for an electric ute is genuinely different from a diesel ute, and this is important for buyers to understand before they commit. Electric drivetrains don't need oil changes, timing chain inspections, injector services, or diesel particulate filter regenerations. The service schedule for an electric ute is fundamentally simpler than for a diesel ute. Brake fluid, cabin filter, tire rotation, battery system health check, software updates. That's largely the list. What electric drivetrains do need is specialist diagnostic capability when something goes wrong with the battery management system, the motor controllers, or the software architecture. That specialist capability exists at BYD dealers. It does not yet exist at the independent workshops that service the bulk of Australia's ute fleet. If something goes wrong with your BYD ute outside the warranty period, your options for independent servicing are currently more limited than they would be for a HiLux or a Ranger. That gap will close as the vehicle population grows and as independent workshops invest in the training and tooling. But in the first few years of ownership, you are more dealer dependent with a BYD than with an established Japanese brand. Factor that into your cost of ownership calculation, and if you're in a regional area, check specifically which BYD dealer would be servicing your vehicle before you sign anything. What the mechanics are already saying? I've talked to people in the trade about this, and the responses break into two very clear camps. The first camp is what I'd call cautiously curious. These are the mechanics who have already been servicing BYD passenger cars for 2 or 3 years and who have noticed that the vehicles are, broadly speaking, not the nightmares they expected. The blade battery technology is robust, the drive units are quiet and so far largely reliable. The software, while occasionally quirky, is updatable in ways that internal combustion engine problems simply aren't. One independent workshop owner told me directly that he'd expected BYD servicing to be a drama and that it has been, in his words, mostly fine. The second camp is deeply skeptical, and their skepticism is not unreasonable. These are the mechanics who watched the early Chinese brand wave arrive in Australia with promises and who saw some of those promises fall apart on the hoist. They remember the LDV T60's throttle lag saga. They remember early Haval quality complaints, and their position is simple: show me the 150,000 kilometre reliability data, show me what the battery pack looks like after 5 Australian summers, show me the vehicle hasn't invented new failure modes that nobody's mapped yet. Until then, I'll keep recommending HiLux. Both camps are being entirely rational, and I think both camps deserve to be in your head when you're making this decision. What the mechanics universally agree on, regardless of camp, is that the arrival of a serious Chinese ute competitor is the best thing that has happened to the Australian ute market in a decade. Competition does something remarkable to established brands. It motivates them to fix the things they've been letting slide. If the BYD Ute lands in Australia with genuine payload, genuine towing, and a price that makes HiLux buyers look twice, Toyota and Ford will respond. They always do. The buyers win either way, regardless of which badge they end up choosing. The one specific concern mechanics flag consistently is battery replacement cost at end of warranty. Nobody in Australia yet has solid data on what a BYD Blade battery pack replacement costs out of warranty on a ute-sized vehicle, because no BYD Ute has existed long enough to find out. The battery is the single most expensive component in the vehicle. How BYD handles out-of-warranty battery degradation claims will define their long-term reputation in this market more than any launch event ever could. So here is where we land on all of this. The BYD Ute arriving in Australia first is a genuine story, not a marketing headline. It reflects a calculated strategic bet by one of the world's most capable manufacturers on the specific character of the Australian market. It is a compliment to Australian ute culture and a serious commercial challenge to the brands that have owned this segment for decades. The vehicle itself, based on everything currently confirmed and credibly reported, is a legitimate competitor on paper. The battery technology is proven in other applications. The powertrain physics favor the electric drivetrain in working conditions. The pricing is expected to create genuine pressure on established rivals, and BYD's presence in Australia is now mature enough that the dealer and parts infrastructure story, while not perfect, is no longer a deal breaker. The risks are real, and I've given them to you straight. Long-term durability is unproven in this application. Towing range in real Australian conditions is unknown. Resale value carries genuine uncertainty. And the software-dependent architecture introduces a category of failure that the traditional ute market has not had to deal with before. My honest read, and this is the same read I'd give a mate standing in front of me asking whether to buy one, is this. If you are an early adopter by nature, if you have access to home charging, if your ute use is primarily within range of charging infrastructure, and if the prospect of lower running costs genuinely excites you, the BYD Ute deserves serious consideration when it lands. Go and sit in one, drive one, do the real-world range test for your specific use case before you sign. If you are a conservative buyer, if you rely on your ute for income, if you regularly travel to remote areas, if you need the certainty of established parts and service networks, and if a $5,000 surprise repair would genuinely hurt you financially, then wait. The data will exist in 2 or 3 years. Let the early adopters generate it. Buy the Ute in 2028, when the reliability story has been written by real owners in real Australian conditions. The BYD Ute is genuinely the most interesting vehicle launch in the Australian market in years, possibly the most significant ute launch since the current generation Ranger proved that you could sell a sophisticated, feature-rich ute to Australians without sacrificing the capability they actually need. Whether it becomes a landmark success or an expensive lesson will depend entirely on whether the engineering behind the badge is as capable as the company behind the engineering. I'll be covering every update on this vehicle as it arrives, the launch data, the first owner reports, the real-world range numbers, and whatever the mechanics start saying once they've had their hands on it. So if you're not subscribed yet, now would be the time, because this story is only just getting started. Tell me in the comments where you stand. Are you genuinely excited about the BYD Ute, or are you a wait-and-see buyer who wants to watch the early owners find the edges before you commit? Have you already driven BYD's other vehicles in Australia and formed a view on whether the brand is ready for this? Drop your honest read below. The good, the skeptical, and the I'll believe it when I tow with it ones are all welcome. If this gave you something worth thinking about before the launch, give it a like and I'll see you in the next one. Drive safe and never be the one who buys purely on the hype